The space station hung quietly in the darkness of space, a silver speck surrounded by countless stars. Inside, the corridors buzzed faintly with a hum of machines and the soft footsteps of alien crew members. Most of the aliens avoided each other, busy with their own duties. But in a small corner of the station, a soft, pitiful sound broke the routine, a whimper. A small cub lay curled up in a metallic crate, trembling slightly. Its fur, a mix of blue and green hues, shimmered faintly under the station lights. The cub's eyes, large and watery, looked around desperately. No one came near. Aliens passing by muttered complaints about germs and diseases. Some even shivered as they hurried past, keeping their distance. Among the crew, one human named Alara noticed a tiny creature. She had been on the station for several months, learning the ways of the aliens, but still, many things puzzled her. Alara's heart tightened seeing the cub like this. She stepped closer, kneeling beside it. "Hey, there, it's okay," she said softly. Her voice was calm, soothing. The cub's ears twitched at the sound, but it didn't move. Alara scanned her surroundings. There was no alien nurse, no robotic assistant. It seemed she was the only one willing or brave enough to help. Alara had learned that the cub had fallen sick after sampling a strange alien fruit. The symptoms were odd: low energy, pale fur, and occasional hiccups that looked painful. The cub whimpered again, and Alara knew she had to do something fast. She quickly remembered an old habit from her home planet: making tea. Tea had a way of calming and soothing, she thought. But would aliens even drink tea? And could it help a cub that was clearly different from anything on Earth? Alara didn't have time to think too much. She moved toward the small station kitchen, scanning for ingredients. There were alien herbs stored in labeled containers. Each herb had a warning about its strength, toxicity, or taste. Her human mind struggled to understand them all at once, but she picked carefully. One she recognized by its calming scent, another by the faint shimmer it gave off when touched by air. Returning to the cub, she began mixing the herbs with some hot water she had carefully heated using the station's universal stove. The aroma filled the small corner. The cub's nose twitched. Its eyes followed the floating steam with curiosity, but it did not move closer. "Come on, just one sip," Alara whispered. She held out a small cup, her hands steady despite the tension. The cub hesitated, stepping back slightly, almost shaking. Alara held her breath. She had faced alien negotiations, complex machinery, even dangerous species, but nothing felt as delicate as this moment. The cub's ears twitched again. Its stomach rumbled faintly, and its tiny head tilted. Slowly, it inched forward, sniffing the cup. Alara smiled gently. Good. After a long pause, the cub took a tiny sip. Its eyes widened. The warmth seemed to soothe it instantly. Its fur smoothed slightly, and the trembling eased. Alara exhaled softly, relief flooding her chest. But this small victory did not go unnoticed. Across the station, hidden sensors and communication devices picked up the strange event. Within minutes, whispers spread. A human giving tea to a cub? Some aliens frowned. Some whispered among themselves, "Suspicious." But curiosity grew stronger than caution. By the time Alara poured a second cup of the cub, she noticed strange signals on the station's communication panel. Other ships were approaching. She frowned, reading the messages. "Is the cub recovering? Can we taste the tea?" Alara blinked. What started as a simple act of care had suddenly turned into something bigger. Dozens of alien ships were signaling the station. The fleet was curious, no, excited about her tea. Some even claimed their own cubs were sick, exaggerating their symptoms just to try it. Back in the corner, the cub's condition improved rapidly. Its small paws reached for the cup, eager this time. Alara carefully let it drink. The warmth and the herbs seemed to work like magic. Its eyes sparkled slightly, and a soft, playful sound escaped its throat. "Good, very good," Alara murmured. She felt a smile forming, but a tiny worry nagged her mind. What if this curiosity turned into chaos? One cub was manageable, maybe even 10. But an entire fleet? She wasn't prepared for that. Across the station, whispers turned to murmurs. Aliens started gathering near the corner, peeking around doors, watching silently. Some pretended not to notice. Others muttered in their strange, melodic language, commenting on her tea-making skills. Illyra had faced challenges before, technical failures, diplomatic misunderstandings, even hostile creatures. But nothing compared to the unexpected responsibility she suddenly held. One human, one cub, and the curiosity of an entire alien fleet. Minutes passed. The cub drank slowly but eagerly. Finishing the cup, it let out a satisfied chirp, nuzzling against Illyra's hand. She laughed softly. "I'm glad you like it, but I hope the others don't all want tea too." A sudden ping from the communication console made her jump slightly. A new message scrolled across the screen. "Prepare more. The entire fleet has sick cubs. They demand tea." Illyra stared at the words. Her heart raced. She had always known humans were underestimated in space, often dismissed as fragile or unremarkable. But she had never imagined her small act of kindness could create a galactic sensation. The cub looked up at her, eyes wide, innocent, trusting. And Illyra realized that she couldn't back down. She had to rise to the challenge, even if it seemed impossible. The next hour was a blur. Illyra prepared more tea, carefully balancing the alien herbs, testing temperatures, and tasting herself to ensure it wasn't harmful. She discovered small tricks, adding a hint of sweetness, adjusting the aroma, and even gently stirring the liquid in a special pattern that seemed to calm the cubs more to be why now. More curious aliens were watching. Some stood at a respectful distance, while others peeked boldly around corners, whispering excitedly. The station felt alive, buzzing with anticipation and quiet tension. Illyra finally served a second cup. The cub, now more energetic, drank happily, making tiny happy noises. Around them, the murmuring grew louder, as if the aliens were sharing this miraculous human skill among themselves. But the sense of calm didn't last. From the sensors, Illyra could see the fleet moving closer, dozens of ships hovering near the station. Signals flooded in, more cubs, more fake symptoms, and more requests. It wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was an expectation. Illyra took a deep breath, looking at the small cub nestled against her shoulder. She whispered softly, "Well, I guess we'll need a lot more tea." And in that quiet, tense moment, something shifted. What had begun as a simple act of compassion became an unexpected turning point, not just for her and the cub, but for the entire fleet. Humans, thought weak and fragile, had suddenly shown a new kind of strength, care, creativity, and courage. Illyra didn't know what the future held. She didn't know if she could meet the demands of the fleet. But as the cub purred softly, the warmth of her tea filling the small space, she realized something important. Sometimes, the smallest actions could ripple across galaxies, changing everything in ways no one could predict. The hum of the station continued. Lights flickered gently. Outside, alien ships hovered, waiting curious, hungry for the humans' tea. And inside, Illyra prepared for the challenge that had just begun, one cup at a time. Her adventure had only just started, and no one, not even herself, could predict how far a simple cup of tea could reach. The small cub had curled against Illyra, finally looking relaxed. Its fur shimmered faintly under the lights, and tiny paws tapped happily on the metal floor. Illyra leaned back, smiling softly. For a moment, everything seemed calm. She had managed the impossible, helped a sick alien cub recover with nothing but simple tea and care. But calm did not last. Within minutes, strange signals began to ping on the station's communication panel. Lights flickered and a soft alarm sounded. Different ships, different frequencies, all asking the same thing. "Is the cub better? Can we taste the tea?" Illyra froze. "Taste the tea?" She blinked at the console. "Wait, what?" She muttered to herself. She had expected gratitude from a cub, maybe a thank you from its parents. But an entire fleet? Curious, she opened the first message. "Your tea is needed. We have cubs with symptoms. They are desperate." Illyra's brow furrowed. The message was polite, almost formal, but something about it made her uneasy. She had no idea how many ships were out there or how many cubs were involved. The term desperate echoed in her mind. Another ping. "We request immediate tea. Our cubs will not rest until they taste it. Safety guaranteed." Illyra exhaled slowly. Safety guaranteed, she whispered. This is getting out of hand. Curiosity soon turned into action. Aliens aboard the station began whispering, murmuring about the human tea. A few brave ones approached Alara, peeking around doors and panels. Fascinated. They had never seen a human in such a role before, calm, focused, and somehow confident among alien cubs. One tall, thin alien with silver skin stepped forward. Its eyes were large and expressive. "You make tea for the cub?" it asked. Its voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but excitement. "Yes," Alara replied simply. "It's just tea, it helps him feel better." The alien tilted its head. We did not expect a human to care so deeply. Its antennae twitched nervously. Word spread fast. By the next hour, small groups of aliens from other stations, even neighboring ships, were arriving with signals claiming cubs had urgent symptoms. Some were clearly exaggerated, designed to trick Alara into giving them tea. Alara scratched her head. She had faced alien bureaucracy before, navigating tricky technical systems. But nothing compared to this. An entire fleet now seemed to be testing her abilities, their cubs pretending to be sick just to taste her tea. "Great," she muttered. "One cub was hard enough. How do I handle dozens?" A small chirp distracted her. The original cub looked up at her, fur glowing softly in the station lights. It let out a tiny, joyful sound, clearly recovering fully. Alara smiled and patted its head. Okay, one cup at a time," she whispered. Meanwhile, the first visiting aliens arrived. Their ships hovered near the station, small lights blinking as they docked. Each brought a cub in a floating carrier, all claiming to be sick. One cub stretched dramatically, pretending to cough loudly. Another rolled its eyes in mock pain. The human stared, realizing some of these symptoms were clearly fake, but she chose not to comment. Instead, she focused on preparing the tea. She had learned quickly. Alien cubs had very different tastes. Some liked strong herbs, others preferred subtle aromas. And each species had a slightly different sensitivity. One cup too strong could make a cub restless. One cup too weak could make it ignore her completely. Alara improvised. She mixed small amount of alien herbs with earth tea techniques she remembered from home. Slowly, she tested the temperature, adjusted the aroma, and stirred the cups in a gentle circle that seemed to calm the cubs. The cubs, some nervous, some playful, all approached the cups. The moment of first taste was delicate. One cub sniffed, then sipped cautiously. Its eyes widened. Another grabbed the cup with tiny paws, drinking happily. Giggles and soft happy sounds filled the station corner. Aliens standing nearby whispered among themselves. Their expressions ranged from astonishment to disbelief. "This human can really make tea that works for all cubs," one whispered. "Yes," another replied, antennae twitching in excitement. "It is unlike anything we have seen before." But humor was never far. A few cubs, clearly faking, collapsed dramatically onto the floor, pretending weakness just to get a second cup. Alara raised an eyebrow, then shook her head. She couldn't help but smile at their antics. "You're clever," she said, serving another cup. The situation escalated quickly. More ships arrived, lights blinking. Dozens of cubs, real and fake, filled the station corner. Aliens began coordinating. Some whispered strategies to each other, plotting who could get the best tea. Others simply watched in awe, amazed by Alara's calm and methodical approach. Alara realized she had to stay organized. She created a small schedule, noting each cub's preferences and timing. She found herself laughing softly at the absurdity. A human, running a tea service for an entire alien fleet, improvising like a seasoned chef, while cubs staged performances just to taste her creations. Hours passed. Each cup of tea seemed to strengthen bonds, not just between Alara and the cubs, but among the aliens themselves. They watched carefully, whispered excitedly, and sometimes even argued politely over who got the next cup. It was chaotic, but there was joy in the chaos, a rare, warm feeling in the cold metallic station. Suddenly, a loud alert sounded. A new message scrolled across the main console. "We have spread the word. More fleets are coming. All cubs need human tea. They will arrive within one standard cycle." Alara froze. More fleets? She had been handling dozens of cubs, but entire fleets arriving, her stomach tightened. She looked down at the cubs, some truly recovering, others play acting, and whispered, I don't know if I can make enough tea for everyone. The cub closest to her chirped softly, nuzzling her hand. Its trust and innocence gave her courage. Illyra took a deep breath. She had faced impossible tasks before, but somehow she had always found a way. This was just bigger, much bigger today. As she set to work, pouring, stirring, and testing each cup, she noticed subtle things about the cubs. One responded to a slight tilt of the cup, another to a gentle tap on the side. She adjusted her movements carefully, almost like a dance. Slowly, systematically, she served the tea. The aliens began to murmur with approval. Their expressions softened. Some even bowed slightly, a gesture of respect toward the human. It was clear. They were impressed, not just by the tea, but by her patience, care, and ingenuity. And then came the most surprising moment. One of the largest alien leaders arrived, a towering figure with eyes like liquid silver. It watched silently as Illyra served another round of tea. Its cub, pretending to be sick, had just sipped. A pause. Then it purred, a low, resonant sound that echoed through the small corner. The leader's eyes softened. Remarkable, it said. A human, able to calm and heal with nothing but tea. Illyra blinked. She had expected respect from a few curious onlookers, but not from a fleet commander. She nodded, her hand still. Steady, her mind racing. The fleet was learning something important today. Humans, though small and underestimated, had a power that could not be measured by weapons or technology. Care, creativity, and courage. The cubs chirped, purred, and whispered among themselves. Fake symptoms melted away as their real enjoyment of the tea became clear. Illyra laughed softly. All right, everyone is happy for now. But I have a feeling this is just the beginning. Outside, alien ships hovered, sensors blinking, and messages continued to arrive. The story of a human's tea spread across channels and frequencies. Soon, it would reach even distant fleets, creating waves of curiosity, anticipation, and excitement. Inside the station, Illyra prepared the next batch, her movements calm and confident, though her heart raced. One human, one small cub, and now, a fleet's worth of expectations. She smiled. Yes, this was bigger than she had imagined. But for the first time, she felt truly alive in space, part of a story that would be remembered across galaxies. The unexpected turning point had passed. But the adventure? It was only just beginning. The space station, once quiet and orderly, was now a hive of gentle chaos. Lights blinked, machinery hummed, and distant ships hovered like impatient giants outside the transparent walls. Illyra moved quickly, yet with careful precision, between the small corner where the cubs had gathered and the kitchen that had suddenly become a command center for tea preparation. She glanced at the communication panel. Dozens of messages blinked urgently. Requests from alien crews, each insisting their cubs were too sick to wait. Some were polite, others desperate, and a few were outright theatrical, clearly exaggerated. Illyra exhaled, pressing her palms against her face. One human, she thought, and an entire fleet of cubs and curious aliens depending on her tea. She tried not to panic. She had made tea before, yes, but this was on a galactic scale. Okay, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the soft whirs of the station. Let's make a plan. The first challenge was quantity. 1 cub was easy. 10 cubs? Manageable. A fleet? Hundreds? She hadn't prepared for this. She quickly surveyed the kitchen. Alien herbs, boiling systems, storage containers, and tiny cups she could barely reach on her own. It wouldn't be enough. Her eyes landed on a storage crate labeled Emergency Supplies, all species. Inside, she found sacks of dehydrated herbs, extra hot water modules, and small flavor enhancers. She smiled. This will have to do, she said, rolling up her sleeves. Next was preference. Illyra had noticed the first few cubs had very specific tastes. One liked the tea warm and slightly sweet, another preferred bitter with a hint of metallic aroma, and a few had unusual reactions to certain herbs. Some purred, some twitched, and one even refused to drink unless she stirred in a clockwise motion. It wasn't just making tea anymore, it was performing a ritual, a dance of flavors, temperature, and gestures. She realized that each cup had to be customized, which would take time she didn't have. She took a deep breath. Focus, Ilera. One cup at a time. One cup at a time. The first round of new arrivals entered. Their ships docked softly, releasing small carriers holding cubs in metallic cradles. Each cub looked dramatic. Some lay still with exaggerated groans. Others pawed at the air in feigned discomfort. A few even made small holographic projections to simulate symptoms. Ilera's eyebrows shot up. "You're serious, huh?" she murmured. The cubs chirped, oblivious to her comment. She set about her work. Boiling water, mixing herbs, stirring carefully, checking temperature, adjusting aroma, testing taste. Her fingers moved swiftly, almost like a conductor leading an orchestra. Some aliens watched silently, their eyes wide with amazement. Others whispered among themselves, trying to figure out her technique. A few brave souls offered small suggestions, hoping to speed things up. "Try adding the shimmer leaf." One whispered in a melodic tone. "I recommend clockwise stir, slight pause and pour." Another added. Ilera nodded, grateful for the help. Coordinating the fleet's taste was like juggling fire while balancing on a thin wire, but she had learned to improvise. Hours passed. Cups flowed like a river, and cubs drank happily, or pretended to, some faked coughs just to get a second serving. Ilera laughed softly at the antics, a sound that broke the tension in the station. Then came a moment of panic. She glanced at the storage crates. Herbs were running low. The specialized flavors she had carefully measured were almost gone. Outside, the fleet continued to hover, waiting. She couldn't let them down, not after all this effort. Ilera's mind raced. She remembered the station's botanical bay, a place she had rarely visited. It housed experimental plants and alien herbs in controlled pods. Perhaps she could harvest a few, carefully blending them with the remaining dried ingredients. It would take risk, as she didn't fully understand how the new herbs would interact, but it was the only option. She dashed to the bay, moving quickly past humming machinery and glowing corridors. Her hands trembled slightly as she selected the herbs, checking each one for scent texture and shimmer. She imagined the cubs' reactions. Would they like this new combination? Would it calm them or make them restless? Returning to the kitchen, she began experimenting. Carefully, she mixed the new herbs with the old ones, adjusted the temperatures, and added subtle flavors to balance the taste. Steam rose from each cup, carrying a fragrant, inviting aroma. She tasted one carefully. It was surprisingly good. Relief washed over her. "Okay, this might actually work," she muttered. The cub seemed to agree. One tiny blue-green cub purred softly as it drank, its eyes bright and attentive. Another pawed gently at the cup, trying to steal it entirely. Ilera laughed, shaking her head. Meanwhile, the alien fleet began to communicate among themselves. Messages pinged through the station systems. Some thanked her politely. Others expressed awe, and a few admitted they had exaggerated symptoms just to witness her technique. Ilera paused for a moment, thinking about the absurdity of it all. She had started the day with a single sick cub. Now, she was running a full-scale tea operation for a fleet. And yet there was joy in it. A strange, unexpected joy. She realized that she wasn't just making tea. She was connecting with beings across galaxies through care, attention, and creativity. Suddenly, the station's main doors opened. A delegation arrived. High-ranking alien leaders from multiple ships. Their expressions were unreadable, but their eyes were keen, studying her every movement. The cubs in their care had already tasted her tea and were purring or chirping in delight. One tall alien, eyes gleaming like molten silver, stepped forward. "Human," it said in a deep, resonant voice. "Your tea, it exceeds expectations. Our cubs have never been this calm, this satisfied. How do you manage it?" Ilera smiled humbly, hands still moving in a delicate rhythm as she stirred another cup. "I just watch them and try to understand what they need," she said simply. The alien's gaze softened slightly. "It is remarkable. A human with patience and insight that rivals our best caregivers." Ilera blinked, taken aback. She had never thought of herself as extraordinary. But in that moment, with cubs happy and leaders impressed, she realized something important. Sometimes the smallest acts of care become the most extraordinary achievements. Just then, a tiny cub jumped from its carrier, hopping toward a cup she had just poured. Another followed, mewing playfully. Some cubs pretended to stumble, others chirped loudly. The kitchen corner had become a stage for comedy, joy, and chaos all at once. Ilera laughed softly, shaking her head in disbelief. But her attention returned to the bigger problem. More cubs were arriving. Messages continued to ping from distant fleets. Soon, the number would be too large for her to handle alone. She would need strategy, improvisation, and perhaps a little luck. She glanced at the cubs, then at the steaming cups, then at the communication console. "All right," she whispered, determination hardening in her chest. Time to really prepare. One batch at a time, one cub at a time, and somehow one fleet at a time. As she worked, stirring carefully, pouring with precision, and adjusting flavors, a new realization struck her. The fleet was not just curious about the tea. They were watching her, studying her patience, her method, her creativity. In their eyes, a human had suddenly become a symbol of hope, care, and ingenuity, qualities that could unite beings across galaxies, one cup at a time. The next hours passed in a blur. Tea poured, cubs drank, aliens watched and whispered. Ilera learned small tricks with each batch. A slight tilt of the cup could soothe a fussy cub. A brief pause before pouring made others drink more eagerly. She experimented carefully with flavors, discovering combinations that seemed to calm multiple species at once. By the time the last of the first fleet's cubs had tasted her tea, a soft cheer echoed through the station. Even the most serious alien leaders gave small nods of approval. Ilera exhaled deeply, wiping her hands on her apron. Her body ached, her mind buzzed with exhaustion, but in her chest, a warm glow of satisfaction lingered. She had done the impossible. She had prepared tea for dozens of alien cubs, balancing preferences, calming fears, and even winning the admiration of alien leaders. And outside, she knew more fleets were still approaching. More cubs were waiting. The galaxy was watching, curious, anxious, excited. Ilera smiled softly. She didn't know how long this adventure would last, or how she would manage the next wave. But she knew one thing. She was ready. After all, a human with a cup of tea and a heart full of care could face any challenge, even if it meant taking on an entire fleet. And with that thought, she stirred the next batch of tea, ready to meet the curiosity, humor, and chaos of the galaxy head-on. The station's main hall had transformed into a festival of sights, smells, and sounds. Tiny cubs chirped, purred, and tumbled about, while aliens from across the fleet watched silently, their expressions a mix of curiosity, suspicion, and anticipation. Ilera stood at the center, a single human among dozens of species, preparing the final cups for what she could now only think of as the ultimate tea ceremony. The first thing that struck her was how different the cubs were when they were not pretending. Some leaped eagerly toward the steaming cups, their eyes sparkling. Others, trained by theatrical parents, stretched dramatically, groaning as if the heat of the station were unbearable. A few flickered tiny holograms above their heads, simulating symptoms that no human could possibly understand. But Ilera had learned quickly to read the subtle signs of real desire versus fake drama. "All right," she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible over the hum of machinery. "This is it. One cup at a time, one gesture at a time." The first round of sips began. A small green cub cautiously sniffed the aroma, then licked the liquid delicately. Its eyes widened, pupils dilating in surprise. A soft purr escaped its throat, a sound that seemed to echo across the hall. Ilera held her breath. The alien spectators leaned forward, their antennae twitching and eyes narrowing in focus. Then came the most surprising reaction. The cub did a small dance, hopping and spinning in delight. Others followed, mimicking its movements in joyful chaos. The hall erupted in tiny chirps and soft laughter. Some of the adults, watching closely, whispered each other, exchanging expressions of astonishment. One of the tallest aliens, a silver-skinned leader with a crown-like crest, stepped forward. Its voice was deep and melodic. "Human, we underestimated you. Your tea, it is unlike anything we have ever experienced." Ilera nodded, hands steady as she poured the next cup. Her mind raced, balancing flavors and temperatures. She had learned something crucial. Each cub responded to slightly different cues. A tilt of the cup, the aroma, even the way she lifted it mattered. A cub with violet fur twitched nervously, pretending to collapse. Another, bright orange, squeaked loudly as if in pain. Ilera chuckled softly. "Nice try," she said, adjusting the aroma of the next cup. A gentle swirl, a faint tap on the side, and the cub relaxed, drinking happily. The ceremony continued, each sip a delicate dance of trust, observation, and subtle manipulation. Ilera's technique became a rhythm. Stir, tilt, pour, wait, observe, adjust. Some cubs purred. Others blinked slowly, while a few climbed onto her shoulders or arms, demanding more attention. The audience watched in stunned silence. Humor and drama mingled. One cub pretended to faint, rolling dramatically on the floor. Another flickered holographic flames above its head, claiming the tea was too hot to handle. Ilera raised an eyebrow, suppressing a laugh, and poured a cooler, sweeter cup. The cubs sipped and chirped in delight. The spectators exchanged murmurs of approval, some even bowing slightly in respect. It was not just tea, it was art, diplomacy, and performance all at once. Then, a challenge arose. A group of cubs from a distant fleet had different tastes entirely. Their palates were sensitive to metallic notes. Some reacted to sweeteners, and one seemed to enjoy bitter flavors that others rejected. Ilera paused, examining the ingredients. She realized she had to improvise again. Mixing, testing, adjusting with precision. She crafted a new blend on the spot. The aroma rose, warm and inviting, and the cubs leaned closer, sniffing curiously. The first sip was tentative. The cub's ears twitched. Its eyes widened. Slowly, it drank more, savoring the liquid. Then came a purr, soft but clear. The alien spectators gasped lightly, whispering amongst themselves. Ilera smiled faintly, her hands moving quickly to the next cup. One at a time, keep the rhythm. Some cubs, clearly theater-trained, tried to steal cups from others. A tiny blue cub grabbed a cup of an orange one, spilling a few drops. Ilera sighed and gently redirected it, pouring a fresh cup. The cubs chirped happily, oblivious to the minor chaos. It was then that the first major test arrived. The eldest cub of the fleet leaders, a majestic creature with shimmering scales and eyes like molten gold, stepped forward. Its tail flicked nervously, and it pawed the air with exaggerated weakness. Ilera's heart raced. One wrong move could upset the delicate balance she had maintained. She observed, remembering all she had learned, preferences, reactions, cues. Slowly, she poured the tea, swirling it gently. A delicate aroma floated upward, a combination of sweet, bitter, and metallic notes that she had blended carefully. She extended the cup with both hands, eyes steady. The cub sniffed, hesitated, then licked the tea carefully. It paused. Its golden eyes scanned her face. Then, slowly, deliberately, it drank more. A low, resonant purr escaped, echoing through the hall. The spectators were silent, watching in awe. Then, in an unexpected moment of humor, the cub batted the cup, spilling a tiny drop onto the floor. It paused, looked at Ilera, and mewed softly as if to say, "I approve, but I'm still dramatic." Ilera laughed quietly, shaking her head. The ceremony continued. Every sip, every small reaction, every soft purr or playful leap built a rhythm that the cubs and spectators alike followed. Ilera moved like a conductor, orchestrating flavors, gestures, and aromas with precision. She realized that what she was doing was more than tea. It was a bridge between species, a shared joy, and a testament to the unexpected strength of one human. By the end of the first wave, the cubs were satisfied, playful, and content. The hall echoed with soft laughter, chirps, and purrs. Even the most serious alien leaders smiled, their eyes reflecting admiration. One leader stepped forward, voice deep and melodic. "Human, your tea, it is extraordinary, not merely a beverage. It is connection, joy, and understanding. You have achieved something remarkable." Ilera blinked, overwhelmed but proud. She had started with a single cup for a sick cub. Now, she had conducted a ceremony for dozens of cubs, connecting species across fleets, and proving that a human could make a difference in a galaxy that often underestimated them. Humor remained, as always, Some cubs pretended to stumble or feigning to get extra cups. Others purred loudly, performing tiny dances. Ilera laughed softly, serving the final cups, her hands steady but her mind buzzing. Outside, ships hovered, sensors blinking, waiting for news. Messages from distant fleets continued to arrive, expressing awe, curiosity, and admiration. Word of the humans' tea had spread far beyond the station. Ilera took a deep breath, watching the last cub sip its tea. A soft glow of satisfaction filled her chest. The cubs were happy. The spectators were impressed. And somehow, the chaos of the day had transformed into a shared celebration. Yet, as she glanced at the communication console, her eyes widened. More signals were arriving. Distant fleets now curious, eager, and ready. The galaxy had learned of her tea, and there was no turning back. Ilera smiled, her hands trembling slightly with excitement. She had faced the ultimate challenge of taste, patience, and improvisation, and succeeded. But the adventure was far from over. Somewhere out there, across countless stars, fleets awaited her skill, curiosity, and courage. For now, she could savor this moment. The tea ceremony was a triumph. But deep inside, she knew the next wave of challenges was already approaching, and she would have to rise to meet it. Her heart raced, a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The cubs purred, chirped, and tumbled happily around her. The alien leaders nodded in approval. And for one brief, shining moment, a human in a small station had united a fleet with nothing but tea, care, and patience. Ilera's adventure had reached a climax, but the story of a human and her tea was far from finished. The galaxy had tasted something remarkable, and word would spread like wildfire. She stirred another cup, carefully, thoughtfully, and with a quiet determination. Yes, the tea ceremony was over. For now. But the legend of the human's tea had only just begun. The space station had finally quieted down. Tiny cubs tumbled and purred happily in the corners, licking the last drops of tea from their cups. Ilera leaned against a counter, exhausted but smiling. Her hands were still warm from stirring and pouring, and her mind buzzed with the events of the day. What had begun as a single act of care for one sick cub had transformed into a galactic sensation. Messages from the fleet continued to arrive, filled with admiration and astonishment. The human tea miraculous. We never imagined such care. Prepare for more tea, please. Each note carried subtle humor, politeness, and excitement, a language that transcended species. Ilera chuckled softly. One cup at a time, she thought. One cub at a time, she had managed something extraordinary. And now, the galaxy was watching. The cub that started it all, the tiny blue-green one, pushed itself toward her, tiny paws tapping on her leg. Its eyes glimmered, playful and trusting. It let out a soft chirp, as if to say, "Thank you, human." Ilera smiled, stroking its fur. "You're welcome. You've been very brave." Across the hall, alien leaders observed quietly, some whispering among themselves. One tall, silver-skinned leader stepped forward, eyes glowing faintly. Its voice resonated across the hall. "Human, you have done something we did not expect. Your care, your patience, your skill, it has united cubs across fleets. You have proven humans are capable of greatness, even in ways we cannot imagine." Ilera's cheeks flushed slightly. She had never thought of herself as extraordinary. She was a human, small and fragile in a galaxy filled with giants, predators, and species far more advanced than her. Yet, here she was, recognized by alien leaders for something as simple, but as profound as tea and care. Humor, as always, found its way into the moment. Some cubs began to mimic human gestures, bowing, waving tiny paws, or performing dramatic feigning acts just to see her reaction. Ilera laughed, shaking her head. Even the alien leaders smiled faintly, though they tried to hide it behind their stoic expressions. One of the leaders, a tall being with translucent wings, stepped forward. "You have created a bond, not just between cubs and humans, but among our species. We have watched and learned. Your patience, your empathy, it is remarkable." Ilera's heart swelled. She had started the day worried, nervous, and unsure of her abilities. And now, she had become a symbol of trust and care across an entire fleet. But she was not done. Outside, the fleet remained, hovering in formation, sensors blinking, messages arriving with increasing frequency. More cubs, more curiosity, and more fleets had heard of her tea. The galaxy, it seemed, was ready to test her skill further. Illyra stood, brushing her hands on her apron. "All right," she whispered to herself. "Let's see what the next challenge brings." The cubs, sensing her determination, chirped and pranced around her. Some curled against her legs. Others climbed onto her shoulders. Their trust was clear, and their joy was contagious. Illyra realized something important. The smallest act of care could ripple outward, across stars and fleets, creating connection and understanding that no weapon or technology could match. The leaders gathered near her, whispering to each other. One of them, with scales like polished silver, spoke up. "Human, we wish to honor you, not with words but with recognition." Illyra tilted her head. Recognition? She hadn't expected anything like this. She had only wanted to help a cub feel better. A holographic display flickered to life above the center of the hall. Across the fleets, ships blinked in acknowledgement, projecting messages of admiration and respect. Symbols and icons representing unity, care, and cooperation glimmered in the air. It was a gesture of galactic honor, acknowledging her contribution. The cubs chirped and tumbled, unaware of the ceremony happening around them. Some nudged their cups. Others rolled in playful antics. Illyra laughed, realizing the chaos and humor of life would never leave her alone, even as she became a legend. Then came a subtle but profound moment. One of the alien leaders knelt slightly, antennae brushing the floor. "Human, we have underestimated your species. Today, you have shown us that true strength lies not in power, but in care, ingenuity, and courage." Illyra's hands trembled slightly. Strength, courage, she had only acted out of kindness. And yet, here she was, recognized across fleets for something she had never considered extraordinary. The cub that had started everything leapt onto her shoulder, purring loudly. It nudged her cheek, as if congratulating her. Illyra laughed softly. All right, I get it. I'm famous now." Humor and drama mingled once again. A cub from a distant fleet pretended to swoon dramatically, only to leap upright moments later, chirping for more tea. Others performed tiny dances, twirling and spinning in delight. Even the most serious leaders could not help but smile. Illyra looked around, observing the fleets outside. Their ships hovered in respectful formation, sensors blinking. Distant messages arrived with hints of admiration and requests for future visits. It seemed the story of a human's tea had spread far beyond the station, reaching ships and fleets she had never even known existed. She realized something incredible. A single human, armed with only tea, patience, and empathy, had created a legend across the galaxy. Not with weapons, not with technology, but with care. Illyra exhaled, feeling a warmth in her chest. The adventure, she knew, was far from over. The galaxy had tasted something extraordinary, and they would remember it. Her tea, her actions, and her courage had become a symbol, a reminder that even the smallest beings could make a huge difference. One of the leaders stepped forward, eyes softening. "Human, we invite you to continue. Your tea, your skill, your spirit is needed across fleets. Will you accept this responsibility?" Illyra paused. She had faced challenges she never imagined, but she had learned something vital. She could rise to any challenge, one cup at a time. "Yes," she said finally, a quiet smile forming. "I'll do my best." The cubs chirped and tumbled around her, celebrating their human hero. The alien leaders exchanged nods, approval shining in their eyes. Outside, the fleet hovered, sensors blinking, ready to witness more of the humans' remarkable skill. And in that moment, Illyra realized the truth of her journey. Legends were not born from battles or victories alone. They were born from small acts of courage, patience, and care, acts that could ripple across galaxies, connecting beings in ways that words could not. Humor and joy remained in abundance. A few cubs performed tiny acrobatics, trying to climb her legs, while others tugged playfully at her sleeves. Illyra laughed, brushing their fur gently, feeling a sense of unity and wonder that she had never imagined possible. The fleets outside continued to send messages, eager, curious, and playful. The galaxy had learned something extraordinary. Humans, though small and underestimated, could create joy, connection, and even legends with the simplest of acts. Ilera took a deep breath. Looking at the cubs nestled around her, she stirred one last cup of the day, aroma rising like a promise. The cubs chirped, the leaders nodded, and the distant fleets hummed with quiet admiration. Yes, the tea ceremony was over, for now, but the legend of a human's tea was just beginning. Across galaxies, across fleets, and across species, stories of one human's courage, care, and patience would be remembered. And as Ilera poured the final cup, a tiny cub purred softly, leaning against her shoulder. She smiled, knowing that even in the vastness of space, one simple act, one cup of tea, could change everything. The galaxy was watching, curious and eager, and Ilera, the human who had made tea for a sick cub and for an entire fleet, had become a legend in her own time.